Hey everyone, and welcome to the Perfect Bite podcast, your fusion of food and entrepreneurship. You'll hear stories from chefs, restaurateurs, CPG brands, and more from the food and bev industry. All of them are at different points in their journeys, talking about their experiences and how they've cooked up something new. Let's dig in. Welcome back to the Perfect Bite podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Perkins. I've chatted many times on this podcast about how I have severe peanut and tree nut allergies. I was diagnosed right around 10 years old, weeks before Halloween. This was a time food allergies didn't seem quote-unquote as common, and candy and sweets were a big factor in feeling left out. My family did some research, and lo and behold, a pioneer in the allergen-friendly confectionery space came into our lives and for others across the country. I can't believe I get to speak to one of my own personal icons today. Please welcome co-founder of Vermont Nut Free Chocolates, Mark Elvidge. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Sarah. It's so nice to meet you, and thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for responding to my inquiry. I reached out right after I'd been to Vermont myself, was unable to come to the company store just because it was closed on that Saturday, and thought, I'd love to talk to Mark and Gail. And lo and behold, here you are. Thank you so much for taking the time. I cannot wait to hear about your story, how you created these gorgeous chocolates and other products. And even though, yes, they say Vermont Nut Free Chocolates, they really are for everyone. They're just so delicious.
Yeah, and that's kind of a common misconception when you see a free from label or it says free of this or free of that. You know, if they don't have the allergy and need the dietary restriction type of safe food, people that don't have the allergy kind of shy away from it. And they think, oh, it's going to be missing some taste, flavor, or texture. So yeah, we make sure all of our products actually are suitable for any chocolate lover who loves chocolate, whether they have a peanut allergy or not.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that is an interesting misconception I'd love to talk about further, especially as you talk about the beginning of the brand, because, I mean, you were founded in 1998. So I found you in 2000. Within those first few years, you've been around for quite some time, so I'm excited to dive in here and learn a little bit more. Always love to take things back to the beginning when we chat here. When did you first fall in love with food? What were your favorite foods as a kid? What was food like for you growing up?
You know, my mom did a lot of cooking growing up, so it was always a lot of homemade meals and just wholesome meals all the time. But sweets, I always had a sweet tooth, so confectionery chocolate was always part of what I liked to get for treats. You know, I liked apple pies and plum pies. She made a really good plum pie that I still say it's my favorite kind of pie. Yeah, that was growing up was, there was some sweets involved as well.
Did you grow up in Vermont? Were you maple everywhere too?
Yeah, no. So I actually grew up in Quebec in Canada. Yeah, I was born in the States and lived in Canada until the early 80s. So grew up in Quebec. So a lot of maple sugar up there as well. It's a big maple syrup country as well, but it was right on the U.S. border. So we were down in Vermont much of the time. We had a summer cottage on Lake Champlain in Vermont. Spent a fair amount of time in the state before actually meeting my wife, Gail, here and moving over full time.
And what was your career journey like leading up to Vermont Nut Free? Were you involved with food? What was really that moment that made you decide to make the change? What was the aha moment?
Yeah, so I wasn't really involved with food. I was in, growing up while I was in Canada, I was in the customs brokerage business. And then I worked for a couple other private companies in Vermont when I first moved over here. And then I was in the travel retail business, duty-free business for many years. So being on the retail side of things for many, many years. And my wife, Gail, she was in the accounting department at a utility in Vermont, a utility company. So neither one of us really were involved in food business at all before launching Vermont Nut Free Chocolates. But my wife always been a great cook and a tremendous baker. And yeah, she's a really creative person in the kitchen. So.
Oh, I love that. And so Vermont Nut Free was really inspired by your son. What was that moment like? When did you discover that he had food allergies, specifically nut allergies? Yeah. What did you feel as parents? And what really was your thinking of, well, we specifically have to do something about it?
Yeah. So Tanner was 8 months old when he first reacted to peanut butter on an English muffin that Gail was having at breakfast. And she had him on her lap, and he was teasing for it. And kind of put it up to his lips as if to offer him a little bit. And pretty immediately, he broke out in hives and started screaming and turned red. And she knew so something was drastically wrong. So it was a Sunday, and she called her pediatrician, and they called back, right? Because it was an on-call kind of thing on a Sunday. So they said, he's probably allergic to peanuts, and you should just keep him away from peanuts and nuts for another few months. And then at 1 year, we can get him into an allergist and get him tested. So, and the initial exposure to peanut allergies. I mean, growing up, we didn't know anybody that had peanut and nut allergies or food allergies in general. It was just so much less prevalent. So he was our first introduction to it, and, had to learn a lot, become a nut-free, peanut-free household, and call manufacturers and kind of figure out what else they make, what else they package, where there could be cross-contamination risks within, the production or packaging kind of lines or processes within these companies. And so Gail did a lot of phone calls, did a lot of research, did a lot of learning. And the one category that she quickly found just wasn't available was chocolate and confections, because most chocolate companies, even if they make, something that has no nuts or peanuts in it, because of the way they process or package and shared equipment, shared lines and facility, it renders it, as you know, unsafe for somebody with a life-threatening allergy. So in doing that research and her figuring out that, hey, this is a really tough thing to find, and she didn't want him missing out on any of the seasonal kind of things where you indulge in chocolate and can't eat confection. So she basically started making things at home for our family that were safe, that she knew the ingredients and the sources of it. And obviously we were a nut-free household, so there was no cross contact with her contamination with anything she was making for us. So she basically started making things at home just for us, with really no intentions of selling it or, starting anything. And then as we, would take treats to parties and family get-togethers and gatherings, because it would be the safe thing.
Yes.
People started saying, hey, this is really good. You should sell this. So that's kind of how it started. And he was 1 year old when he was diagnosed. We started the company actually when he was 4. So there was, kind of 2.5, 3 years of just making stuff for our family and friends and gifts and things like that. And then, the more she researched it and looked for things so she didn't have to continue making everything herself, the more it reinforced the fact that there really wasn't anything out there that was safe and suitable for Tanner. So I remember one morning we were both coming downstairs, and she said, we should start a nut-free chocolate company. She said, there's probably a lot of people in the same predicament as us, and there's probably families looking for this product. So I challenged her. I said, yeah, let's do it. And she goes, well, I don't know anything about business. And I said, well, I'll help you with the business. If you can do the product and, figure that out, we can figure it out. So in January of 1998, we actually incorporated and got a Vermont State Health Department license. In Vermont, you're allowed to start your businesses in your home So we were fortunate it wasn't a lot of investment or capital outlay to really kind of start it. So we actually incorporated, and she bought a little chocolate tempering machine. And I remember her saying, it was $300 or $400. And she goes, well, what if nobody buys the chocolate? I'm like, well, you know what? Then we're going to have a really nice machine that you can use to make our stuff. So it was different times. Things might have been a little simpler to launch back then. So anyway, that's what we did. We launched, and I remember our first website was on a free AOL space, and it was like members.aol.com. You're never going to find me. That's kind of where we started. And so we put up the website in January of 1998. And really, I think the first item Sarah ever sold online was in 94, and it was probably Jeff Bezos, right, selling a book.
Yes.
We were really early online, and no retail front, no wholesale accounts, just really going to service and cater to the online community, which we knew must be big, but would be geographically dispersed. So an online presence kind of made sense. And so that's what we did. And that's really how it started. So very, bootstrap in our house, not a lot of capital expenditure or anything other than, some legal fees to incorporate and some insurance and some state health department licenses and inspections and things like that, and a $350 chocolate machine. So yeah, that's kind of how the company started.
Holy cow. And you couldn't get more lucky than the name Vermont Nut Free Chocolates. I mean, if we're talking search engine optimization today, even if someone were to search nut free chocolates, I'm sure you are right at the top of that page.
Yeah, so we do come up 1, 2, or 3 organically on all of the search engines, and that's been really helpful for us over the years. There's more people bidding on keywords and things like that now. So we do now spend some money on Google and some of the search engines to try to keep our products up there. But we naturally and organically just are there if people are searching for nut-free chocolate, peanut-free chocolate, any of this stuff like peanut-free Easter bunnies, peanut-free,
Yes.
any of that stuff is pretty organically and embedded into our products.
So amazing. Do you remember what it was like those first few weeks? So which products did you first start with in terms of selling? What was the demand like?
Yep.
Was it slow and steady, or did you see a boom?
Yeah, so it was kind of slow and steady. It was pretty instantly people would discover us online because, even though it was like really not a domain with our name in it, people would discover us through the relevance of the search. If the search was even a thing then, I don't even know how they found us, but they did. And then if somebody in, let's say, Pittsburgh found us and they went to a support group meeting, which they used to have monthly support group meetings with families kind of just going and meeting in person. And now there's a lot of online connectivity and groups that meet and share thoughts and brands and ideas, that somebody would go, discover us and go to that meeting. And then the next day we get 25 calls from Pittsburgh. And then it was somebody in Chicago. And then it was somebody in Denver. And then it was somebody in New York City. So it was like pretty organic growth and pretty much discovery word of mouth. And then they'd tell their allergists. And I remember, really not long into it, the Boston Children's Hospital allergy department had discovered us through a pretty big base in Boston still today, in the Boston area and Massachusetts. But the allergists were actually including our information in newly diagnosed patients' packets for people to call and get their comfort level that we knew what we were doing and that we were really nut-free and peanut-free, because you can't just believe people, right? You've got to questions and, kind of figure that out. But yeah, so we were a little ahead of our time for selling online and then way ahead of our time for the free from category online. But it was good timing, and it really cemented in our long-time online customer base, which is, still the largest percentage of our business is our online direct-to-consumer channel, even today after 27 and a half years. Oh, my goodness. Doing this, yeah.
My goodness. So you didn't do a ton of outreach yourself. It sounds like word of mouth, organic growth, like you said, and then it just took off because, like you predicted, there were plenty of other families and individuals out there who really needed something like this. I imagine then that first holiday season, you started to see things really pick up because, when do people want chocolates the most? Yeah. It's Valentine's Day, the holidays, and Halloween.
Yeah, and I think we started in January of 98, and the first real Valentine's was a little tight to that for people who were just discovering us. And I'm not sure we had Valentine items, but Easter, we had Easter bunnies and little Easter pops, and Easter was big that year. I mean, a lot of people discovered us and everybody wanted the nut-free Easter bunny. So we shipped a lot of bunnies out that first year. And I still remember there's some of those first customers that discovered us that ordered Easter bunnies in April of 1998 are still customers of ours today. And their children now are adults. We've done some wedding favors for some of the very early adopters that have, kind of grown up on the brand. So that's really validating and extremely rewarding. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's just so special. You built that community, and then, like you said, they were able to grow up with you. I know I certainly did. We're 25 years later from, I believe, when we first discovered you all. And again, it was just such an interesting time. We're talking years before the FDA required on every piece of labeling now may contain or contains one of the top 9 allergens. Oh my gosh, I can remember moments Not to make my mother feel bad, but there was one time she made a coffee cake from a box and she had scanned it. She thought there's no nuts. I take a bite. And funnily enough, there was in the ingredients contains 2% or less of the following. And I had a reaction based off of that. There was pecans somehow. So it was just such a weird time. And again, there weren't as many folks that people knew about food allergies. There are many theories around like why food allergies are continuing to grow in children and adults. It's hard to tell sometimes. There's genetics, there's other factors involved with our immune systems, but it's grown. And this was still a time before there were signs in schools saying peanut free zone and things along those lines. So it was such a relief. And again, delicious. So you're starting off, you're doing essentially, let's call it the beta version if this was tech, of your chocolates from home with your first customers. When did you all decide to take this to the next level in terms of finding a larger manufacturing space, really starting to push out more products here? And essentially, what was that process of having to get those very specific regulations in place for something like this?
Yeah. So again, it kind of happened organically, and moving out of the house we had, I think, 2 or 3 small chocolate machines in the house, and Gail had 2 employees coming to the house every day, and there was packaging and ingredients, and just, it was like taking over, and it obviously just continued to grow and scale. So demand basically led the decision-making process to, let's move this to its own space. So we were in the house in 1998. We were there about a year and a half, and then we started looking for places where we could move it to. And then we found a little colonial house type place in a little main street in South Hero, Vermont, which is just a little bit down the road from us. And we bought that building, we renovated it, we made a little gift shop and chocolate store. We put in viewing windows and made a production kitchen. We used the back 3-season porch for our warehouse and shipping and packing and picking. And it's a restaurant today after all these years. And we were there just literally a month ago, and walking back to look through those spaces and how we did what we did out of there was pretty amazing. So that was our first move out of the house. And that was really within a couple of years after starting. And that was a little bit of, capital expenditure, right, to buy the place and renovate it and get it set up and buy more equipment and bring in more people and all that kind of stuff. So we did that, and we outgrew that space in about 2 years, but we were there about 4 years before we could, get into our next home. And literally, we had just moved into that building in the fall. I think we moved in around Halloween 2000. So we did Halloween out of that building. And then in November of 2000, we had an article about us in People magazine. And it was a 4-page spread just on Vermont Nut Free. And it was a pretty big deal. And we were, the first company to be peanut free and tree nut free on purpose. I mean, organically or naturally, there's some companies that just don't do anything with peanuts and tree nuts, so they kind of existed, but nobody was marketing it or really specifically saying, hey, we're nut free and peanut free, and we're here for you, but we need this product. So we were the real first ones to do that on purpose. And so the People magazine story was crazy, and that's such a huge magazine. And when that issue hit, and I believe it was November 2000, so right before holiday, oh boy, the phone started ringing, and it didn't stop. And it was just, we were slammed, just really, really busy. And even today, we get people who remember that article and say, oh, I remember reading about you guys, and it was this big thing, but now I have a grandchild who has the allergy, and I remembered you. So that was like an amazing, lucky kind of encounter with a freelance reporter that was looking for stories like that I, kind of just ran into randomly at a trade show, and she ran with it, and it was an amazing, amazing lucky break for that. So that kind of blew out that building. And then we had a building built for us in an industrial park back in Grand Isle, which is where our hometown is in the Lake Champlain Islands. And we moved into that, and that was much bigger space. We thought it was going to be good forever, and we were there 14 and a half years. And we outgrew it in 10. We probably could have outgrown it sooner had we pushed on the wholesale and distribution channels, but we were still primarily a mail order, direct to consumer. Weren't on Amazon or anything at that point kind of business. So we outgrew that building. In the end, we had taken over the whole building on 2 levels, and we had storage containers, those shipping containers outside to store like corrugated shipping boxes and styrofoam warm weather insulated containers and things that didn't need the temperature control. So that was really inconvenient to operate out of there, and we couldn't really stage pallets, for distributors to pick up or bigger orders. So we, 7 years ago now, moved into our current location, which has a lot of room to scale and grow and has some future capacity built in, without much CapEx. So we're in a good position now and are pushing the gas a little bit on that kind of next chapter of the company to scale it out. And, we haven't scratched the surface of people even online that could know about us. We have a very fraction number of customers based on the number of people that actually have peanut and tree nut allergies. So there's a lot of white space in all channels for this brand to continue to grow and thrive. And we're excited about that next chapter. And 27 and a half years in, it's still exciting to get up and come into the office and do the things. And we have a super good team of people here now who are very, very engaged and committed and invested in making delicious products that are safe for our customer base, but also appeal to the broader chocolate loving audience, which is much bigger, of course, than the niche that we service.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have so many questions based off of that, and chills for you. Honestly, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong about this statistic, but isn't it about 10% of folks in the United States now have food allergies?
It is very close to it.
It's a rather large number.
Yeah, it is.
And so that's at least 30 million folks.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah. And again, we're not everything to all people. Like, we're not top 9, so we have dairy in all of our products, or it's shared equipment, right, or facility because of the way we process. And then there's soy lecithin in everything. We do have chocolate covered pretzels, which are our best selling item, that have wheat. And
so good.
So they have wheat. So we can't, serve all of the food allergic community, but we do the peanut free and the tree nut free. We've always been coconut free. We've always been sesame free. We went egg free a year ago in August. Yeah, 1 full year egg free. So, but there's dairy and soy in most of our products, and then there's wheat and some shared wheat on some of our products that are in a shared vicinity. We have a couple of production rooms that we separate out as much as we can, but again, we can't service everybody with every food allergy, but we do what we do well in terms of the peanut and tree nut population base.
Yeah, which is a large part of the food allergen community. So again, it's very hard to be, all top 9. One day we might have more than top 9. So, but I think that folks definitely appreciate that you're such a pioneer in this space, because I'm sure it then inspired other brands who said, well, I can't have dairy. How about I focus on a dairy-free chocolate that could perhaps be nut-free as well, but their focus then can be that niche. So it's just a nice way for everyone to play together, I think.
Yeah. And again, there's more options today, which is good for the consumer, right? There's plenty of choices, I think, that you can find in products, and companies have become more aware of the need to have some products that are suitable for people with dietary restrictions. So yeah, it's good. And, we all have developed our little channels of customer base, and we just appreciate the long-term lifetime commitment that basically our customer base seems to have trusted us with all these years.
Yes.
Yeah.
And your lifetime commitment. I mean, how has Tanner felt about this over the years, seeing a chocolate company that was essentially built for him grow so much?
Yeah, I think he's proud. He helps out when he can. He's in a different industry. He's in tech, and he's doing really well. And, spent some time in London, and he's in Boston now, and we see them a lot. But he's very helpful in analytics and statistics and stuff like that too. And he's always looking out for us.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad to hear that. Again, you were like, you don't have to come into the family business, but again, here's some free chocolate whenever you want it. So I want to talk a little bit more about your ingredient sourcing again. So when folks try this, the top adjective that I think when I try to describe it to someone who hasn't put it in their mouths yet is truly like the purest chocolate I've ever tasted. There's something just that hits you. There's just so much more to it than the candy bars that you pick up at the grocery store. without giving too many of your secrets away, what is the special aspect behind that sourcing and making sure, again, that this is as safe as it can be every single step of the way?
Yeah, so we have a pretty rigorous food safety program in place in our building. We have a full-time person who's charged with our food safety and quality and writes all our programs. We go through third-party audits, of course. We're subject to health department inspections and FDA inspections and all of the different things. So we have a rigorous supplier approval program. So there's multiple hoops that any vendor that wants to sell us any kind of ingredient that we use within our processes has to go through to make sure that we are certain that that product is suitable for use in our finished goods. The chocolate, there are many different grades of chocolate from very, kind of, you've all maybe tasted the cheaper, waxier, plasticky tasting chocolates that don't have a lot of cocoa butter in them, and all the way up to some gourmet kind of couverture, higher end product. We use, to the extent possible, the highest quality that we can in every single product that we bring in, because we know that, yes, people have a dietary restriction. They need nut-free and peanut-free, but we want our products to be better tasting than what the rest of the family's eating, so that then everybody switches to Vermont Nut Free. So it's kind of a little bit of, let's show them how good it can be, and then if everybody switches over, our market share increases. So there's a little bit of that involved. But we make sure that we're using the highest quality ingredients from whatever safe source we source each category of ingredients from. And we get a ton of ingredients, right? I mean, we do granola bars, and we make sun blossoms, which are a sun butter filled cup. So there's a lot of ingredients that go into that center with the sun butter and the different things that we add to make it the right taste. So we use quite a few ingredients, and, we try to, and in most cases have stayed with some original suppliers who that's all they make in their facility. And we habitually get their third-party audits and their certifications and their updated allergen statements and all of those guarantees that they haven't changed the process and they still don't do anything with nuts and peanuts. And it's still what we expected and have been used to all these years. So that's, I think, a long answer to your question of how we make sure things taste so good is just our sourcing process and making sure everything is as gourmet and quality as possible.
Yeah. And it's gourmet, but I still feel like the price point isn't as wild as it could be when you think of, Godiva or something like that. If you were thinking the mainstream doesn't focus on allergen-friendly products.
Yeah. And then the other thing, we talk about price, there's a bunch of considerations. And particularly over the last 18 months, we've seen chocolate and cocoa prices, cocoa beans have gone up over 300%. And that translates to higher cost of doing business and making the products. So that has settled down somewhat, but it's still nowhere near the levels as it was 2, 3, 4 years ago. And I think it might kind of stay there because there's weather issues and supply issues in the countries that grow cocoa.
Yes.
So there's that. But besides that, we have a manufacturing facility, and a lot of our manufacturing is pretty manual. We have people, hand pouring molds of chocolate into little shapes right now. We're making advent calendars for the holidays. Halloween's all made and the turkeys are made. Those are shipping out daily. But, everybody's sitting back there and we're pouring these molds by hand in most cases. Hand foil wrapping, hand bagging and boxing. And so there's a lot of steps and touch points in our process. We're a relatively small company and we're more on the artisanal kind of side. So there's not a lot of big production lines or automation or any of that. Our processes are still very manual. And you're right, Godiva is very expensive. New House, all of those brands are extremely expensive. Our prices have had to go up, in recent years because of costs of doing business. We pay people decent wages. We have good benefits. We have a 3-week per year vacation program for everybody, and costs of doing business are increasing. And then last year we got really hit with the cocoa and chocolate pricing was a big challenge.
Yeah. And whether it's cocoa or I imagine maybe you're experiencing tariffs with other products and materials that you're working with, other policies that are in place? I mean, there are plenty of folks who come on here saying 2025 in food and bev, agriculture, hospitality, it's all feeling a little like 2020 sometimes.
Yeah.
How would you say that you personally and the company are doing your best to push through these types of challenges so that you can get to the other side?
Yeah. So I won't spend a lot of time on COVID, but COVID in 2020, when most businesses had to shut down, we were still considered food, even though we're chocolate, right? It's a food. And we were in the mail order business. We were in the direct to consumer business. So we weren't relying heavily on grocery store shoppers because they were buying center store items, not gourmet peripheral specialty items. They were buying toilet paper and rice and pasta and paper towels and bleach. So our business took off even greater during COVID. We were here. We didn't miss a day of work. Everybody was still here. We have a spotless facility. It's very clean. So sanitizing and keeping things clean and hand washing is just part of what we do anyway. So we didn't have to adapt at all. And everybody was happy to still be able to come to work every day. So they didn't have to stay.
Oh, God.
And the only thing was different. We were wearing masks, for almost 2 years. But our mail order business really grew during that. The tariffs are a little different. I think people are a little bit concerned about where the economy may be heading. I think there's some hesitancy on spending. If they were buying for each holiday and a birthday a year, are they picking the two favorite holidays in the birthday now? So that's kind of something that we're concerned about over time. And then like our foils, we wrap a lot of stuff in foil wrappers, right? And we buy those from a company who makes those foils in New York. So it's a U.S. company that we buy, and they bring in the raw aluminum product, what they make these foils from, in huge rolls from overseas.
Yes.
We got hit on tariffs from a U.S. company who makes our foils. And
isn't that funny? You're like, oh, it was like passed on through multiple people.
yeah, exactly. And then even some of the raw ingredients have a component or two that could be from, the European Union, and that portion of it gets tariffed. I mean, we do a lot of business with Canada, and Canada put on a 25% retaliatory tariff. So it's way more expensive to take things up across the border into Canada and ship them from Canada Post to our customers. We continue to do it and we absorb that, but that was, an unexpected and uncontrollable kind of like, oh my God, we don't need this.
Yes. None of us need this, but
So those things have affected us in addition to the cocoa and chocolate pricing, which is big in itself.
Are you then finding ways to rally the team somehow and get creative in other ways?
So we're in the process of trying to do a little bit more innovation. We recently took on a new equity partner. And we're going to be doing a lot more R&D and a lot more kind of innovation and pushing out some new products. And some of those products may not be solid chocolate, right? Now, if we have a filling in there or an inclusion that's taking up some of that raw or I'd say solid chocolate space, it enables us to offer that product at a little bit better price because it's not really just chocolate, which is really, there's nothing we can do about a solid chocolate piece. We've got to pay for it and cover our costs of making it and make sure that we can be profitable so that we can stay in business and continue to serve the community that kind of expects us to continue to be there. Yeah.
Yes. Well, if I may offer a suggestion, as one of your customers who went from child to adult, you've always made some really nice boxed chocolates. Maybe you can team up with an artist and do some hand-painted chocolates. Some of these things that you see, here I am, I'm like, here, take these ideas. When you say go into another confectionery store, as someone who just also loves pretty shiny things, there's nothing like seeing those jewel-looking bonbons. So maybe that's the future of Vermont Nut Free. Maybe there's a luxury line that comes out of it.
Yeah, thanks.
Like you said, it's got the fillings, it's got something different in there. And that way you can feel like, oh yeah, I'm getting the exact same level of artistry on the chocolate that someone might get with nuts inside, which is always the case. They've always got a nut inside.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we love about our customer base, Sarah. And just like you just made a great suggestion. So many customers that have been with us for so long. We have a list of desired products. Like most people want us to be their one-stop shop. Like they want us to make cookies and they want us to make cupcakes and birthday cakes and all that kind of stuff too. So there's a list of things longer than we have time to address, but it's a never-ending pipeline of suggestions, which is really helpful. And, I think a lot of our products and variations of products have, come from consumer requests. So it's always a good thing to have a pipeline of that.
Oh, I love that. But you're also known for having a pretty tight product line. And is that purposeful? The ones that you continue to offer year after year?
Yeah, we have probably more, like when we add up all of our shapes and flavors and for the different seasonal things, and then the milk dark and the white and the crispy and all the different shapes and flavors and sizes and variations, we have a lot of SKUs. Like as a company, we have too many SKUs, really. So part of some of the scaling exercises that we're going to be doing is kind of going through that and rationalizing how many of these little goat pops do we actually sell a year. So we're going to be looking at things like that and maybe streamlining a little bit, but at the same time, doubling down on our power items that are growing and continue to do some serious volume, and then adding some new innovation and flavor combinations / to the line that we think could be winners.
Oh, I can't wait. I always look forward to a crispy Santa every year.
Yeah, we've had those for quite some time, and they're extremely popular every year.
It's so great because if you can't have a crunch bar anymore, or again, imitating what it's like to have the texture of nuts in something or seeds, this is perfect. Same with the pretzel rods. Sorry for our gluten-free folks, but yes, same with the pretzel rods. What other trends are you seeing right now in the allergy-friendly CPG space? I am just blown away by the amount of creativity that's in CPG these days, and love that it's kind of taking the big dogs by the shoulders and saying, look out for us. People are really excited about the types of food that they carry in their homes now and how they're displaying it.
Yeah. There's a lot of innovation. And then there's companies now that are, again, probably didn't really do things with nuts and peanuts. They're realizing that this is a pretty reliable and long-term customer base that really finds a brand that they like and they really kind of stick with it. There's not a lot of switching around, right? When you know a brand and trust it, and there's really value in trying to create a brand that actually has those attributes that the consumer is looking for in the free from space. So we're seeing some of the fruit snack companies now targeting, we're nut free and peanut free and coconut free and all that, right? So that's great to see because now there's variety of things. A lot of the products are kind of complementary to what we do, right? So there's a fruit snack company, and then there's like a hard candy, and then there's chocolate, and then so it just gives the consumer a little bit more choice, and we can all, kind of work almost collaboratively. We've done some collaborations with some other free from brands in different categories than chocolate, right? As giveaways, and we both share on social a package of our respective brands, and the winners or winner would get this gift pack that contains both items. So there's some collaboration amongst some free from brands. And I think we'll continue to see more of that through FAIR. And there's a packed alliance of manufacturers that are meeting monthly, of which I'm one of the original members of that. And it's a bunch of brands that are allergy friendly. And we are collectively trying to figure out how can we together reach more of our market that don't know about us yet. And help each other kind of grow. And it's kind of a neat feeling to be collaborative with a bunch of what I consider bigger brands who recognize and validate this little company from Vermont. It's kind of cool to be involved with groups like that. So I think we'll see more of that.
I hope so. I don't know if are there any online marketplaces that are specifically for allergen-friendly brands in CPG?
Yeah, there's a couple that have started. Some of them have a pretty limited product assortment. It gets a little complicated if they have to bring stuff in and warehouse it and then ship it out. The drop shipping model is one model that can be used, but then there's shipping created from each vendor, and it's complicated to manage that. So I don't think we've seen a lot of that, but there are still a couple out there.
Interesting. I'll watch that too. But are there any other, say, nonprofits or government entities that you've been working with to help push forward regulations, legislation that just makes things friendlier and safer for all people as they eat?
We do work a lot with FAIR. And again, we're on the PACT Alliance, and they're pretty vocal and active on the legislative front and try to keep the food allergy community front and center. So that's the big one. There's a few others, as you may know. There's some apps and things that collectively, like Snack Safely and Spoken.
Yes, Spoken, Chicago.
Yeah, they have some apps that really link together some free from companies so that people who have the food allergy can go in and kind of program what they need to avoid, and then it sifts through and feeds them brands that would be suitable for their restrictions. So there's things like that out there, and there's, I think, a couple more that are out there as well. I'm probably spacing on their names right now, but those are the bigger ones.
Definitely. Mark, I can't believe we're coming up on time here together. I really could talk to you about this for hours. I'm so fascinated about what you're doing and so appreciative. Last couple questions before we get to the world's best and hardest question, as we say. What would you say are the hardest moments that you've faced and overcome that have really shaped the brand and team that you've built today?
Yeah, I mean, I think the hardest thing is having enough of the right people. We have a super dedicated, I mentioned earlier, a dedicated team who work hard day in, day out to make safe products for everybody to eat. And it's sometimes challenging. I think Vermont has the lowest unemployment rate in the country. So there's, way more jobs than people. So we're lucky. We get a lot of referrals. We have family members who bring other family members who actually have a family of 5 working for us. So we have a lot of referrals, and we're fortunate in that space. So that is sometimes challenging, but we've managed through it. The other thing challenging is just keeping up with pricing on pretty much everything. I mean, freight in, shipping out. And again, you can raise your shipping rates to consumers, but then everybody maybe orders less, or, you know what I mean? They want free shipping, promotions, and things like that, which we occasionally do. It's just the cost of doing business have really gone up, and that's probably been the most challenging thing, to keep pace with that, but not outprice our products to the consumer who's really relying on it and needs to get it to continue to be able to buy our products at fair pricing.
Yes, you're like, and we need to stay in business.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I'm confident, despite, as we've talked about, yes, we are in very difficult economic times, and I think it could be getting worse. But you know what? The nice thing that folks are saying is that means we're in the treatonomics era. So that means the little treats like chocolate, that's still going to be there, because maybe you can't travel as much, but you can give yourself a beautiful box of chocolates, or someone else.
Yeah, exactly.
What would you say you're most proud of? I'm sure you have a list here, but, and what do you see for the future?
Yeah, so I think the thing I'm most proud of is just when we go to like a food allergy conference, or we'll do like a demo at a store or something out there, and having people just come up and say, hey, I've been, a customer of yours for 21 years since my parents found you. And that is hands down, I think, Sarah, the most rewarding things that a brand can have. And not every brand has that luxury. So I'm proud of that. I think for the future, I think we're going to be trying to get more distribution and into more retail doors. We're primarily mail order, direct to consumer as a business percentage right now. And we're going to push on the distribution and more retail stores. We're probably at 2,000 stores right now, but that's really a small portion of our total business. And I think we're going to see that grow significantly, as well as the direct to consumer and our Amazon channels over the next few years, and have more people discover us, so that, 20 years from now, somebody can come to Vermont Nut Free and say, hey, I started buying from you in 2025, and I've been a customer it's now 2050. So that's what we want to perpetuate and bring to reality. We've got work to do.
And I believe it's going to happen. I do. I see you in major retailers and on end caps, and it's just natural. Mm-hmm. And the hunt will be a lot easier.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, so I know you and I are recording right now at the beginning of September, but honestly, in food and consumer land, we've been thinking about the holidays since July. Halloween and the holidays are just around the corner. What really are your favorite products that you like to recommend for trick-or-treating and for gifts?
So I think hands down, my favorite item for gifting particularly is our dark sea salt caramels. Those are,
My brother's favorites.
yeah, those are really good. And then the trick-or-treating, we've got a milk, dark and crispy and white versions of a lot of different shapes, right? Most of them are solid items. Those do extremely well. We have our sun blossoms are doing well. We generally do like a holiday package for those. And again, Halloween and Thanksgiving are completely produced and they're shipping out the door every day now. Christmas is pretty well, and Hanukkah are pretty well underway, and we've got more work to do on those, but we've actually shipped out some holiday distributors already that they're going to be putting in stores in mid to late October. So yeah, we're always, and now we're, starting to think about our Valentine's and Easter selection for this year and what packaging we can get and what changes we need to make. So there's always a kind of a pipeline of projects behind the scenes to make sure we have a good selection for people during the time they want to get it.
Yes, as long as it's shelf stable enough. Yeah. I mean, again, you can get it out there and you're thinking months ahead of time and people are like, oh, it's still the end of summer. And you're thinking, no, I'm thinking about Valentine's.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What is one piece of advice you'd want to share with someone who's looking to start something of their own and be an entrepreneur, whether it's in food or any other space?
Yeah, I think the number one piece of advice is today, there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of things you can do research on. I would suggest getting a mentor in the space that you're considering entering. And entrepreneurs are usually very generous with their time and advice to aspiring other entrepreneurs. So I think the mentor thing is really important. And then the research. And then remember, in a lot of cases, because you can launch online pretty easily today, with the food business is a little tougher because you've got regulations unless you're not making your stuff, right? You're using a co-manufacturer and not actually having to set up a production facility. There's a bunch of different layers involved with that. But yeah, do some research, get a mentor, and do your homework. And then do a soft launch. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to wait till it's perfect. It's better to launch and learn and adjust and move forward than to analyze it for 6 years and somebody else does it before you.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say that would be and then the last piece is, so that's the get-to-itiveness, right? And then the next part is the stick-to-itiveness. A lot of times people start something and it's hard. It doesn't happen by itself. It's not easy. It's long hours. It's frustrations. It's a lot of no's. It's a lot of trial and error. But I think if you stick with it and making sure you're analyzing and adjusting and you stick with it long enough, that's a pretty big key as well.
Yes. It's tough to do your own thing every day. And you feel the roller coaster of emotions. The best thing can happen to you and the worst thing can happen to you on the same day. So yeah. I like that. Go get it-to-ness and stick to it-to-ness. I will take those.
Get-to-itiveness and stick-to-itiveness. And I think I'll have to credit Brian Tracy, who's a motivational speaker, with that. One of his books that stuck with me from a way long time ago.
Oh, yeah. I love it. Well, Mark, here we are. As a little reminder to everyone, this is called The Perfect Bite, since the folks that we talk to are a bit of a perfect bite of the food value chain, but it's also because we all have our own perfect bites, our own unique tastes, those memories, those recipes. Maybe it's a piece of chocolate that we just can't get out of our heads and that will stick with us forever. So, Mark, what is your perfect bite?
My gosh, my perfect bite.
It's tough.
I don't know. There's just so many things. Pursue your dreams. Act on them, right? Don't let somebody else do it first. And I can't tell you how many people after we started this business said, oh, I was going to do that and I should have done that. And you're probably like hundreds of people. And they've been lifelong customers. So you got a good idea, get out there, sound it off a couple of key people that you trust, and just do it.
Yes. And what's your favorite Vermont Nut Free Chocolate? Can you choose from one of the babies?
Yeah, so I like the mocha truffles and the dark sea salt caramels. Those two, hands down, are the ones I choose more often.
Mark, thank you again so much for your time, your wonderful stories. I'm so happy that the Elvidge family started such an incredible business that really paved the way for others. Can you let listeners know where to find you? So in terms of social accounts, the website, as well as perhaps any chains or stores that they can find you. I know that you have quite a list.
Yeah, there's quite a list. So our website is vermontnutfree.com, and Vermont is all spelled out. We do have a pretty active Facebook page. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Twitter, which is X, I should say, Pinterest. And then, yeah, feel free to reach out to me too. I have a LinkedIn page. Happy to connect with people and grow my network and yours as well. At our website, we have Store Finder, and we're in many more because some distributors put us in stores that we don't know we're in. And then we're always available online, 24/7. So that's probably the easiest way to find us. And then look up the Store Finder and just check by zip code, see if there's anybody local that has it.
Sounds great. Mark, thank you again so much. And everyone, thanks for tuning in. This was Mark Elvidge's Perfect Bite. Thanks for tuning in to The Perfect Bite today. You can listen to future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Thanks in advance for subscribing, rating, and reviewing. You can follow The Perfect Bite on social media @PerfectBitePod. Now go get something good to eat.